Mhm. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Stories That Inspire Us / the author series. You know, I have had the amazing opportunity to read so many amazing books with the author series, and I am so excited to welcome to the Stories podcast today, Kelly Kaur. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm equally excited to be here. I can't believe it's December when we booked many months ago, and here we are.
I know it seems like 3 or 4 months ago, actually. And
Right.
yeah, I full disclosure though, and I want to show her book, Letters to Singapore. I haven't read the whole book. I'm about, I would say, halfway through it, but I want to tell you something. But before we get started in our conversation, I want to read a little something from the back because I've been looking at this every day as I read. And I thought that it was so poignant. And it's about you, Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Kelly Kaur's rollicking voice is intimidable. She is a brilliant new talent.
How wonderful.
And that was written as a review of your book from Aretha Van Herk. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I thought that was very touching because I think as an author myself, when you give your book to someone to read and for them to give you a review on it, sometimes it's a little scary.
It is all the time, because when the book goes into someone else's hands, you have no clue what their interaction with the book is going to be. And that creates a new relationship for the reader and the book. And it's out of my hands. So I'm just always touched when people tell me they are affected or they find something that they can relate to. Such joy as an author.
It certainly is. And what I felt about what I've read so far is like, I felt I was the one getting the letters and going through the stories. And could you explain, I want to back up just a tad, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but when you sat down to write this book, what did you want Letters to Singapore to really get across to the reader?
So this is the best part. I had absolutely no clue what was going to happen. I was in a writing program for immigrants, and my mentor was the amazing Aretha Van Herk, who encouraged me throughout the time. And I came up with this idea without really having a clue how I was going to do it. So she said to me, just write the first letter. And when I did, it made sense that the protagonist, Simran, who was a student from Singapore in Calgary, would then write to Mummy, her sister, her Chinese friend, Amy, and her South Indian friend, Anita. So the 5 women, in exchanging letters with each other, it became a wonderful opportunity for secret sharing, because letters are so private and personal. So I would have to say that this was quite the accidental book for me, and one that I'm quite, in retrospect, happy about, because I'm realizing that the letters have so much potential. So I'm grateful for the accident.
Oh my gosh, I was just going to say that because, you know, when I've asked that question to other authors, and even when it's been asked of myself, like when I'm asked to participate in an anthology, sometimes I'm like, okay, like I've written a lot. Oh, what am I going to write about? You know, and then of course it comes to me sometimes slower than normal, but I think that's all the process as well.
Absolutely. And I think that when you make a happy accident like that and it works, it works. But sometimes when you write, you realize that you then need to edit and fix things along the way. So as a newbie, as a first-time writer, I really just closed my eyes and jumped in. And I think that the only way to write, which everyone has told me, is to actually just write instead of trying to come up with a formula or a perfect plan. And that's for me. Every writer has a different game plan.
That is so true because, you know, even at times when I've still in the process of writing my own book, and I'm not going to lie, I've been dragging my feet. I've been saying it for at least 2 years now.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's all these different methods to write your book, whether it's, you know, maybe writing on your calendar. For instance, November was National Novel Writing Month.
Right.
And that would be what, about 1,000 words a day or so. And I'm probably off
Wow.
the math there. But that didn't work for me. So I came to the realization that I just had to write for myself.
Right. For sure. I didn't write for 20 years. I had 2 pieces published over 20 years ago. And then I got so many rejections. So I gave up. I was disappointed. I was dejected. And then, you know, life unfolded. And when I was in this program, it was a 4-month program with a wonderful mentor and the support of the Writers Guild and Alexander's Writers Center. I wrote this book in 100 days, and I don't know what happened. What happened is I realized if I wait another 20 years, I would be dead. So I might as well, you know, take this off my bucket list. And in doing so, it confirmed that indeed my passion to write is my passion to write. And I'm not going to have any regrets for waiting so long.
I love how you said that. My passion to write is my passion to write.
Right. And
So,
I think it's writers, people have so much pressure, right? Right now, right here, right then. And I think, as you just said, it's a personal calling. And one day you just wake up and said, I'm going to do it.
So you published quite a few years ago. So there was that knowledge, and probably even that excitement when you write something and it's published and you're like, oh my God, I'm a published author.
Right. I had 2 poems published when I was in university, and then nothing then. And this novel I wrote in 2019 was accepted by Stonehouse Publishing in 2020. And, you know, thanks to dear old COVID, came out in 2022. So it launched on May 1st, and in 4 places, in Vancouver, Regina, Calgary, Edmonton. And then I went to Singapore for 3 months and got the happy news that the Ubud Writers Festival in Bali, Indonesia, had selected my book to also be launched yet again. So I made the most wonderful trip just a month ago and was at the biggest writers festival in Southeast Asia. And I'm still pinching myself that this passion led to this and this led to that. And I'm just so grateful.
That is so exciting. And I felt your excitement as you were saying that.
Yes.
Because here you were, as you said, my passion to write is my passion to write.
Right.
You're taking this course under the guidance of Aretha. You write the book.
Right.
Publish, and it just, I want to say, exploded. Like the magnitude of doing this is so much more than perhaps what you thought it might be.
Yes, I couldn't even dream this, because my book has been on the bestsellers list in Calgary and Alberta 14 times, and it's going to the moon, and people around the world are reading it. So as a first-time writer, if you tell that to me, I would say, yeah, I don't believe you. You're just trying to get me to write. But in actually witnessing and going through these experiences, I'm realizing that my own resistance was something that I had to overcome. And so grateful that the opportunities fell into place. And I think when someone comes knocking on your door, open it and take a chance.
You know what? That is so true. Which kind of leads me to my next question. How did you know that this book writing course or whatever it was that you did was happening? Like, how did you find out about it?
A friend sent me an email, and it was a call for an application for an immigrant to apply for this 4-month writing program. And I didn't want to do it because I really only had 2 poems published 1,000 years ago. But because I had written nonfiction pieces for my Toastmasters experience that had taken me to the world stage in 2017, I thought, well, I can transfer this stories to my writing background. So that's what I did at the interview. I told them my experiences. I made up this. I'm going to write letters to Singapore without knowing exactly what I was going to do. And when I got accepted, I realized that the playing was over. It was time to actually write. And that's when I sat down, and it was a busy time. It was a busy time, but I just desperately, happily, nervously, excitedly wrote as much as I could.
I want to go back to the name of the book again, because
Yes,
we've said it a few times, obviously, Letters to Singapore.
right.
You just came up with that
Yes,
title without really knowing what you were going to write about.
correct. I just made it up. The night before the interview, my daughter and I brainstormed. I said, Tegan, I have nothing. And I said, what about, I don't know, letters to Singapore? And I didn't even think it would be possible or plausible. And she said, yeah, let's just go with that. So I kept repeating it. And then finally they said, yeah, show us your letters to Singapore. And I have to say that sometimes the first instinct is pretty good, because I absolutely love my title. Because when I was in Singapore for 3 months, I went to the bookstore and I say, hey, I've got this book. Would you like to bring it in? And they did. They brought my books in, and it sold very quickly, and they're bringing a new batch in. And I love it because I'm an immigrant who has a foot in Canada and a foot in Singapore. And I love my 2 countries and my 2 lovers equally.
Oh, I love that. So will there be a future Letters to Canada, perhaps?
Yes, I have had so many wonderful suggestions. And there's, how about texts? How about emails? How about just take all the women, bring them back? How about only write about the mom, or only Lynn? So I'm taking all the suggestions. And if you read my book and have any, make sure you send them to me.
Oh my gosh, I sure will. I'm getting the kind of the chills again. I think I may need to put my heater on again. But that, because that is so exciting, with all the characters that are in your book, really could be, one of them going off on their own adventure. Like that,
Right.
the possibilities for Letter to Singapore are endless and go way beyond just this book.
It is, and it's so endearing to me because when I wrote these stories, these were stories that are real stories. They're not specific people I know, but they're a combination of stories that I gathered, listened, knew about people, and I combined them and did my little wonderful fiction piece of the art of creating. So to have women represented between 1985 to 1988, women of color, women who live in Singapore, women whose voices are not often heard, but nonetheless, their stories are no different from any of us anywhere. I just had a book club meeting yesterday, and they said, I come from a farm in Saskatchewan, and I was alone in Calgary, or I understand the mother, or this happened to me. I know what it feels like to be an outsider. So I'm so grateful that the book and the character and the stories has come up and become a universal connection. And that's what books are, right? when I read books, that's what I connected with people who lived in England or Australia and said, I understand. I want to be like that too.
Wow, that is amazing. I want to also ask you, when you first received the actual book, and I'm feeling it in my hands, what did it feel like to hold your book in your hands?
Even today, it feels like a dream. I think that, when I hold my book, and when I received the book, it was during COVID. So I'm at home, the box arrives. I don't open it for a long time for some reason. I think the excitement and anticipation. And when I opened it and looked at it, it was a moment of, you know what, Kelly, you did it. You did it for yourself. And it's something that's going to be there forever. And if you hadn't done it, if you hadn't written this book, then your sentence would have been, yeah, I wanted to write a book. So having that in my hand, and even now, I like going to bookstores and stocking my own book and going, that's me. How on earth did I do that? So it's just a moment of pride and real sense of achievement that I can do this and I can do this again.
All right, I have a silly question to ask you because it just popped into my head. Okay.
Yeah.
When you are stocking your books in a
Yes.
bookstore, wherever it may be, do you ever kind of back up and maybe do a selfie of you looking at your book?
All the time. So
I love
I do pictures, and then I have bookmarks, and then sometimes I'll stalk people and say, do you read? And they go, no. Then I go, okay, or yeah. And I said, here's my bookmark of my book. And I've had a few people go and buy the book. Not that I'm forcing them, but I just think I'm just so excited. It's like I want to share my stories. And when I see my book there and I take the pictures, and my daughter goes, that's okay, Mom, you're allowed to do that.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And you had also mentioned that your book has been on the bestsellers list in Calgary 14 times.
In Alberta, yes, on the Calgary Herald. And that was the other thing. A friend would text and say, you're in the Calgary Herald. And I would just dash to the newspaper, to the grocery store and buy a newspaper. I mean, who on earth buys a newspaper these days? And I would bring 2 home. And there I would be, Calgary bestsellers list. I've been number 1, number 7, number 8, and also on all of Alberta. And that is something, again, I would never have imagined or dreamed of. And once you have a taste of it, it's pretty sweet. It's pretty gratifying. And it's such a personal sense of, Kelly, it's there. It's there. So, and then of course, I like to harass my family and my children, my daughter and son, say, hey, look at that, I'm there. And what I like about that secretly and quietly is that I want them to know that they can achieve their dreams too.
That is so true. Kind of a multi-level, not just for yourself, but
Right.
for your family, and specifically your children, that
Right.
maybe that sparks something in them. Gee, Mom wrote a book. Look how good she did. I should write a book. That is
Right.
phenomenal. Wow. Do you think that when you write the different books or follow up to the books, that you may come up with new characters? Like, have you thought of maybe new characters to include in your next book?
Actually, for the next book, I'm doing about people living in apartment blocks. That's why I was in Singapore for so long as well. In Singapore, we live in HDB flats, Housing Development Board flats or apartments that are government subsidized. And my family lives in a point block 16 stories high, 4 apartments or flats on each floor. And I grew up in those, and all my life, I always wondered what's happening in those little boxes in the sky. So there's stories in the sky. And that's what, when I went back, I was talking to people, investigating, watching, skulking, stalking, all of those to get a sense of Singapore stories and maybe a few from Calgary. So that's my next book. And once I finish that, then maybe the third or fourth one, I hope I have that much left in me, will be the part 2 or the sequel of Letters to Singapore.
Oh, I love that. Now, when you were doing your investigating, research, sometimes we know we don't want to research something, but sometimes it's difficult to put our finger on that. But you kind of went into it, as you said, you grew up in I think you referred to it as a flat.
Yes.
Okay. And you often wondered what was going on in those different apartments. What would you say was the most, number one, what did you learn from it? And can you say, obviously without giving away too much, because I don't like doing that, but what was the most outrageous thing that you may have ever heard while doing your research?
I think in listening to stories, I was surprised that when I was growing up, I thought my stories and my situations were the most difficult or challenging, and I was so alone. And now, years later, when I hear my friends tell me about their stories, it just blows my mind that we were all so similar and how we kept those secrets. And in our daily life, we just carried on like normal and usual. And then we would go back to our little boxes in the sky, and the other life would emerge. And that made me realize that it would be so intriguing to read or write these stories and again show the connection that we human beings have, that what we see may not be what we get, or what we get may not be what we know is really happening in our other lives.
That is so true. When you designed the book cover, and I want to show it again, obviously, what came to your mind? Like, how did you picture this looking like when you were in the stages of developing? Like, did you picture it in your mind? Did somebody help you with it?
So my daughter, who's a teacher, she helped me. I brainstormed with her, and she sat down with her iPad and did 3 different covers in 5 minutes, while I was like, how did you turn on the iPad? And so she came up with one where there were 5 women and there were letters flying. And then she said, what about we do Singapore on the top and Calgary below? So when you flip it over, this is Calgary, the Calgary Tower and the Saddle Dome. And when you do this, this is the HDB flat, and these are the cable cars in Singapore. So she came up with this idea, and then the graphic artist through the publisher designed this. And initially she put in icons of Singapore, which were current. And luckily for my daughter, she said, Mom, in 1985, you didn't have any of those, the Lotus and the Marina Bay, so we had to go back. And I just love this idea so much because it has both of my favorite places on earth.
That is absolutely fascinating. And I'm so glad that I asked that question, because that has so much meaning and so much depth, which, when you do the cover for your next book, I'm like, I already can't wait to see it. Like, it's got to happen quick, just saying.
I know. I'll ask Tegan to help me, my kid, and then obviously if it's through the publisher, they have graphic designers to help as well. But it's quite fascinating because when you or we go to the bookstore or the library, you look at covers and some are brilliant and some are like, I don't know what's happening. And how are you attracted to the cover? right? And does it affect you? So that's something I never thought about, being a brand new writer.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And the colors are just beautiful. The light kind of blue. It really just goes so well. And I love how the back of the book is a different color. And of course, the binder part with the name of the book, Letters to Singapore, Kelly Kerr. This is absolutely fascinating. I am so excited that I had the opportunity to interview you today. Where can our viewers and listeners get in contact with you?
I have my own website, www.kellycore.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And if you Google Kelly Kaur, I also teach at Mount Royal University. You'll be able to see my email, which is kkaur@mountroyal.ca. So I look forward to you sending me an email if you have a question, a suggestion, an idea. I really enjoy those.
And also, I believe I have the link to your book, if I'm not mistaken, but I will double check that, and we'll make sure that all that information gets in the show notes. I also want to say too, just a segue away for a moment, just want to welcome again all of our listeners on the Wisdom Audio app. So thrilled that you are all here. And when you go to purchase this book, please make sure that you leave a review after you're done reading it, because that is so important to all of our published authors. Lend a helping hand, and of course leave that review. I can't thank you enough for being on the Stories That Inspire Us, the author series today. I hope you will definitely consider coming back very soon. I see you as a repeat offender on the podcast here.
I want to thank you for giving writers a voice, because we work quietly and silently, and this is such a beautiful platform for us to share and to know that we have kindred souls out there. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Kelly. I'm going to do a quick sign off here on the Wisdom Audio app. Again, thank you all so much. I see a lot of familiar names here. This is what I do because I love it. I love sharing other people's stories. And I am honored that Kelly was able to come on today. I'm going to sign off now on the Wisdom Audio app. Thank you all so much. And then I'll do my formal sign up on Facebook here. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye for now. All right. Oh my gosh. We have so much more to cover. Kelly will definitely be on the podcast again. And again, I will make sure her information is in the show notes. This would be for your book club. This would be a great, awesome book for a book club. So, all of you, the listeners and viewers that have book clubs, purchase Kelly's book. Thank you all so much, everyone. Thank you, Kelly, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.